Thank you so much, Annie. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited to be here with you all today. When I was approached about this opportunity to speak today, I come from a family of educators, so I was really excited for the opportunity, given the great impact that you just have overall for our students and society. So without further ado, today I want to share a little bit about talking about well-being and the importance for driving balance. Okay, so just in terms of kind of what I'll cover today, I'll give a brief intro, just a little bit about my background, talk about some of the signals of burnout, and then the 8 dimensions of well-being. I think there's multifaceted in terms of what we could focus on in terms of our overall both mental and physical health. And so want to do more of a deep dive into what those areas are. And then talk about some strategies that we each can use to further promote our overall well-being. And then I'll open up for any questions. So just kind of getting started, would love to hear if anyone wants to share just in terms of well-being, anything that they would be interested in getting out of the session. Please feel free to use the chat or come off mute. If not, we can revisit. But all right, so I'll share a little bit about my background. As Annie mentioned, I'm currently at Google. I work in the HR field, but I was a bit of a career switcher. So I actually started my career in finance, have moved around quite a bit, and so um, found kind of different avenues for kind of like personally and professionally things to get involved with to kind of help me with my balance, and also just kind of feeding my interests. So just a little bit personally, I love to volunteer. I've had a chance to get involved with a few organizations in doing mentoring, working on my public speaking, helping to teach financial literacy, in addition to my day job. So it's one of my passion projects on the side that helps me with my balance and overall well-being. So I want to talk a little bit about the symptoms of burnout. And I think we're all coming off of a very interesting time in the world with coming out of the pandemic, just the different things that are going on in the world. And so it's very important to kind of make sure that we're checking in with ourselves in terms of how we're feeling, and being able to identify if there's something that we need to kind of address or have more of a focus on proactively. So some of the common symptoms are feelings of self-doubt, if you're feeling like helpless or trapped, defeated, maybe detached from what's going on, if there seems to be more of an increase in terms of a lack of motivation, maybe like having a cynical or negative outlook, and like decreased satisfaction. These are just some of the symptoms of burnout, but it has been definitely something that has touched individuals in a number of different industries, and it's important to just kind of be able to kind of be aware, to focus to see if there's something that you can do to kind of like address those concerns. Go ahead, Annie.
I just wanted to add, I just was listening to something on a podcast or on the radio, and you all might be aware of this, but I didn't realize that burnout actually has its own diagnostic code that doctors can actually assign and ascribe. That was a real eye opener for me. So I just wanted to add that in here because it's more than just like feeling tired and like exhausted. Like it is a real recognized like medical, condition when you reach this state of burnout. So I just wanted to add that just because that was something that I had just learned just the other day.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. And I think it's one of the things that can sometimes be ignored because we do all live like very busy lives. And so um, some of these feelings may seem kind of normal because we're just used to like multitasking and a lot going on. But um, to that point, there it is a serious concern. And I will just see, I saw a few folks kind of chimed in terms of interest for what they are looking to get out of the session. And Beth shared learning how to do a better job and work-life balance, and then got a +1 from Karen. So yeah, hopefully we can kind of cover some ways to help with that balance. So there's 8 dimensions based off of one study about well-being. And so, when we think about our health, it's very holistic. So I'll kind of talk through what those 8 areas are. And then later in the session, we'll do a brief activity and talk about some strategies to kind of continue to reflect on your personal well-being, and take some actions to promote well-being. So one is emotional, and so that's dealing with anything that's kind of like your personal feelings, just being in tune with how you are feeling. Um, and the second one is occupational. So that's tied to just your overall satisfaction with your career, your job, and the next one is intellectual. So how are you continuing to grow and have be engaged in thought-provoking activities? Environmental. So this is anything in terms of like your outside environment, kind of clean air, water, um, like just anything kind of surrounding yourselves. Uh, and then the next one is financial. So that has to do with just kind of financial planning, managing expenses. And so, I think having like that financial stability can have a big impact in terms of like your wellness, and other factors. Social. So how are you connecting with others, the relationships that you build, both at work, outside of work, just kind of overall, how are you doing socially? Physical, so that's anything that has to do with your physical health, and including your nutrition, exercise, kind of disease prevention. So anything that has to do with your physical health. And then spiritual. That's tied to identifying kind of a purpose and meaning in your life on a spiritual basis. Um, So I know I kind of talked a little bit about what kind of those areas are. And so I'll kind of tie it back to, I think, how I look at reflecting on well-being and kind of what encompasses like those different areas. And so I kind of tie it to identifying like a personal why, because to me, that drives my importance in terms of like focusing on my well-being, focusing on my health, because there's things in my life that are important to me and are my drivers. So I won't spend too much time on this, but just in general, my why is aligned to my family, my faith. I love to travel. Volunteering, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, and then being a continuous learner. So, when I think about wanting to continuously ensure that I'm healthy and having balance, I tie it back to kind of my bigger purpose or reason for wanting to maybe sometimes take a step back and focus on like one of those kind of aspects that I mentioned. Let's see. Oh, there's a comment in the chat. Um, yeah, no, thanks for sharing. And would you like to elaborate any more, just in terms of like the overlap or the question there? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Okay, how about now? There we go. I was just struck by how, how like the financial category, for example, like that I can just see very much bleeding into emotional stress, and like just how there are 8 different areas and ways to think about it, but very clear how there's a lot of overlap or impact within another. Like occupation could have caused stress on certain areas, depending what your occupation is. How does that impact your social, availability and ability to create different relationships? So anyway, more of a comment, just
Oh,
struck that
sure.
it's very much
Yeah.
interconnected, all those different 8 areas.
Yes, yes. No, very, very true. It's almost like more of a kind of continuum circle to kind of how they interact with each other. Um, and so wanted to take a little time to just do kind of check in, and if you're comfortable with either sharing in the chat or coming off of mute, but um, are there areas that kind of maybe stuck out for you in terms of wanting to focus on, or sharing some of the things in your life that are really kind of part of your drivers um, for well-being, or ensuring that you're focusing on your well-being? I'll give it a few seconds for folks, if they're typing, to chime in. Oh, so managing stress, yeah, no, that's very important. Yep, the connectivity between like the physical and how that can impact the emotional. And I know for me too, like I think one thing that I realize is that at different points, the different I can it might be a different dimension that's impacting me. Like, for example, I recently moved to Chicago, and so the social aspect was something that kind of came up for me because I'm acclimating to a new location and wanting to build some of those relationships, and also kind of starting a new role or transitioning to a new company. So um, at different kind of points in your life, there might be one that is more of a focus versus others, to to kind of think about, and come up with some actions. So someone shared, yep, finding time to take care of me is hard. Can take care of other people's. But yeah, no, and that's why it's very important, because and kind of tying to just like filling from a or pouring from a full cup, because by taking care of ourselves, we're able to help take care of others, and be a resource, and provide guidance. So but that's a very good point. So thanks for sharing. Now, I did plan just like a short activity, that I wanted folks to be able to just take a step back and think about the 8 dimensions, and maybe one of the dimensions that you would want to focus on between like maybe now and the next week or so, and a goal that you can identify, one step that you can kind of take in the next day or so to work towards that. And then also one thing that I found to be extremely helpful when focusing on well-being is having a support system or individuals that are um, either may have knowledge in that particular area that you're trying to work on, like maybe they're kind of professional in that area, or someone that you can just share that you're working on, um, maybe having more balance, or you're working on um, the kind of maybe like an exercise plan, and so that they can potentially be a workout buddy, or just kind of encourage you when you have those days where you don't feel like working out. So I found that to be just extremely helpful to kind of identify that, plan it out, and then having someone kind of in your corner to support you in those efforts. So I'll go back to just a slide with the 8 aspects, um, as you all start to think about your focus areas. Give a few minutes to just kind of think through that. And then, would love to open it up if anyone's comfortable with sharing, or, either their goal, or their support person, or just even one step that they're planning on taking in the near future.
Veronica, I was wondering if you, while everyone's starting to kind of noodle on it and think about it, I know sometimes I have a hard time, like, I'm not sure what the strategy, or like what like a quick first step might be in tackling any one particular area. Do you have
Yeah.
any examples? You don't necessarily have to go through all 8, and you just shared one around working out, but could you potentially share any other top of mind examples in a few of the other areas to just kind of help us get some ideas flowing?
Yeah. So I would say, um, from the maybe intellectual standpoint, if there's something that you're looking to like learn more about, or I know for me recently, I think I might have mentioned that I do Toastmasters, and so um, getting involved with activities that will maybe like stretch you in those areas um, could be something on an intellectual kind of on that dimension. Um, I think occupational, like also thinking through like what's your career trajectory, or what are your career goals, um, and working on kind of like planning that out a bit, to kind of make sure that that's like achieving your goals. Let's see some of the a few of the other ones. Um, yeah, I think the social one. So I know again, this one came up for me recently with moving, but I know in other locations, what I've done in some instances was joining like a meetup group where I found groups that individuals were interested in similar activities, and just kind of came together to socialize, and that helped me to start kind of building those relationships. Then I think we talked about physical, but yeah, so those are just kind of maybe a few examples, but would love to kind of hear um, anything that you all think that kind of in the future you would want to focus on um, going forward. Again, feel free to just drop them in the chat or come off of mute. Okay, so for social, picking up the phone more often, to call a friend just because. Yeah, no, that's great. Anyone else? Any other examples? And I know I kind of went through the 8 dimensions pretty quickly. So, feel free to, I think we'll share the slide deck, but, kind of think through um, the different areas and where you are in those aspects. But yeah, it looks like a few more. Adult time with no kids, yes. physical. So getting more sleep, going to bed at a reasonable time. Yep, that makes a big difference. Um, yep. So I think I see some kind of plus ones in there, but yeah, um, there's a lot of things that we almost just need to kind of take a step back to say, if I want to focus on this particular dimension, um, what are some steps that I can take? Stop all notifications. Yes. That definitely helps with the focus. And so thanks for sharing, everyone. And so just in terms of some strategies to continuously support your well-being, just again, we kind of talked about burnout, and being in tune with how you're feeling. So just listening to your feelings, kind of acknowledge if something feels off, then that's okay. But working to kind of seek the resources to address that. Reflecting on where you feel out of balance. So, eight dimensions, it's they're kind of cover a lot of different areas, but they're also very connected as well. So, kind of reflecting on where you might feel that you need to focus. So, maybe again, and that could be situational based. So, maybe if you're have a financial goal, then your financial well-being might be something to focus on at that time, um, versus again like moving or a health goal. So it can vary just depending on like the stage in life and what's currently going on. And then prioritizing those actions and activities. So you all shared a few of the focus areas that you want to work on kind of going forward or in the short term. So, really identifying how to prioritize taking some of those steps, because the action part is the key to be able to um, start seeing kind of improvements in that well-being area. Oh, go ahead, Anne. Yeah.
I love the idea of what you said, like it can change during, like, where you prioritize can shift over time based on, yeah, where you are in life, or even just it could probably shift day to day, month to month, week to week. Um, so I really like that idea, because I think sometimes it's like I want to do it all, and that just becomes overwhelming. Start a new workout routine, get to bed early, like figure, like just tackling everything. But I'm curious, because do you have any suggestions for how to identify what that maybe one thing is, like, because sometimes it might just feel like a general feeling of overwhelm, and I wonder if, like, even for myself, I think I maybe have a hard time identifying, like, what is that thing that's keeping me up most, or like my biggest stressor. Do you have any like tips of, like, is it just like sitting with yourself for a second and quieting down and just seeing like what thoughts and where you feel it in your body that's like coming up for you the most, to identify like where's that most important thing to prioritize?
Yeah, no, great question. I think sometimes it's kind of identifying, maybe if initially, like if something feels off, like maybe you're having trouble sleeping continuously, and then maybe kind of oftentimes talking to others about kind of what's going on. Sometimes that's helpful for someone to, from an outside lens, to be able to kind of help you identify, like, okay, I hear you're sharing, like, there's a lot going on at work recently. It, maybe that might be kind of the area to focus on. So sometimes having like trusted outside individuals is an avenue to kind of identify things. I think your other thing you mentioned in terms of reflecting or having some kind of personal time by yourself, that's another great way to just kind of sit with your thoughts. And I know for me personally, a lot of times I try to get outside and just like walk and in nature and by the lake, especially here in Chicago. And that's a good time for me to just kind of um, unplug a bit, but then also kind of check in with myself. So I think there's a few different ways to go about it, but yeah, no, great question. Let's see. So we kind of talked about just prioritizing. So again, I think it's easy sometimes to say like, okay, well, if I want to work on this area, these are the things that I need to do. But then sometimes with life going on, it's hard to like find the time to actually like do those. So really just being conscientious, and that's another reason why identifying a support person can be helpful in these efforts as well, because um, they can they can kind of be in your corner to encourage you further. Seeking help or expertise or guidance or support. So there's both professionals from a physical health, mental health standpoint, and then in really kind of all those 8 areas, kind of different levels of expertise or guidance. So, feeling comfortable to maybe doing some additional research to see if there might be an expert in that area to kind of seek advice or guidance on some actions you could take to work on that dimension. And then again, just continue. This is it's a very continuous process to make sure that we're okay, and if we're not okay, that we have a chance to um, see what areas to focus on to kind of be in a better space. So, feeling being able to just kind of look into other avenues, and other maybe things that actions you could take that maybe you don't necessarily like come up with naturally, to say like, okay, well, if I want to work on um, my financial well-being, like what are ways that I can do that, and just doing a Google search and coming up with some strategies. So there's a lot of information out there, but just feeling comfortable with just kind of learning more about, and being proactive about taking some of those next steps. And so with that, I'll open it up for any questions that I can answer, or any other thoughts or things that anyone wants to share about maybe their well-being journey, or some of their next steps. All right. Well, not seeing any other additional questions, but again, I really appreciate everyone's time this afternoon. This is a topic that's near and dear to me in terms of working with um, Google's employees, and just understanding the importance of well-being and balance, and um, making sure that we're able to find a way to kind of prioritize ourselves and our health and well-being. But if there's no other questions, I'll wish you all a good afternoon, and take care.